Hello, and welcome to Infinite Love Season 2, Episode 18. Before I begin, I want to give another shout out to my cousin Jackie, who did an amazing job asking me all those beautiful interview questions from my beautiful, amazing TikTok community. I enjoyed answering everything, and of course, I don't mind getting personal, but that also comes with some boundaries as well. But I had the time of my life sharing my responses, but also in the presence of my cousin. She really did a phenomenal job, and she was really nervous because it is a little intimidating, and I told her this is kind of how I felt, having a mic up to my face, trying to talk. I said, now imagine talking to yourself when you're doing this alone. It's a bit different. Nonetheless, I just want to say thank you, Jackie. So what have I been up to while taking this beautifully long break before I began Season 2? Well, a little bit of everything and a little bit of nothing, which is perfect. I've really enjoyed my time. I've done a lot of inner work. I've done a lot of work on my house. I've done some extreme traveling, solo that is. And yes, I have slept. I have relaxed. I have caught up with friends and family. I've read a couple books. I just truly did a lot of self-reflection and relaxation. And of course, I got my hikes in. But let's get into something special I wanted to share for this episode. I have said in the past that on this self-healing journey, I love the lesson. And I know that sounds strange. I can't say that I love them exactly in those moments, especially when they're very harsh or very exhausting or emotionally draining. But I always tell myself that more good is going to come out of this because I trust, I believe. So during my break, I did a lot of self-reflection and learned a lot of new things about myself. And one of those discoveries was letting go of the fear and taking that leap for myself in a very new environment. So let me just say this. I decided to plan a trip, and not just any trip, my first solo trip internationally. I don't even know where to begin. Let me take you back to planning it all, because that was a whole adventure in itself. So a few months before I got out of work, one of my coworkers is also a travel agent. So I sat down with her and I basically said, I'd like to go to several countries over in Europe solo. And originally had intentions to go to Italy because that was always on my bucket list. And it was between Italy and Costa Rica. But I had already been to Costa Rica, but there was something specific I wanted to do there. So I told her about it, and life got in the way. Busy school schedule. And she finally came to me with a packet of just all these random places. And out of nowhere, there it was, a trip to Greece, Athens, and Santorini. And I thought, okay, well, I keep staring at this. And Greece has been on my bucket list, but it was one of those trips that you desire so badly for so long, but it almost seems to be just a dream. Just a wish. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just the magic of that place. So I stared at it way too long and said, well, this is obviously where I need to go. So I told her I would love to go here. And so she kind of put it aside, and then we got back to it, and she's like, okay, when do you want to go? And obviously I had to figure out when I was working summer school. And the hard part about that is you don't really find that stuff out until the end of May when we get out of school. So that doesn't leave you much time. And when I say everything was taking place the very last second, it was. But I trusted. I literally and simply let everything go, no control, and kind of left it all up to fate, up to universe. Whether or not I was going to attend this trip, whether or not I was going to go at a certain time. I held no expectations, and I let go of all that fear and that anxiety and just said, I'm going to trust this. If it's meant to be, it will be. And so there it was. She had booked the trip. I was to leave right after summer school got out. I think I had about 3 or 4 days, and then I was gone. Now it was up to me to find my flights because I told her that I also wanted to do another country. and utilize it simply as a hub. I thought I was going to go to Ireland. I have family there. I've been there twice. And I had found a beautiful, peaceful spot on the bay near Dublin and thought, oh, I would love this. It would be a great quiet time, just spend a couple days, and then book my flight to Athens, which, if you don't know this already, finding a great price for a flight to a country is key. But here's the kicker. Utilize that country to go to your next country is so much cheaper. And when I say so much cheaper, I saved over $1,800 on airfare because I utilized a hub, a pit stop per se. And Dublin wasn't working out though, for some reason. So I had reached out to Kayak and explained my story. I don't even know why I explained it to this guy, but I just told him what I desired. So of course he was looking for flights for Dublin. But I guess because of something I told him, he decided to reach out to me. And he didn't have to, but he did. And he was like, what do you think about going to Madrid instead of Dublin? And I thought, well, wow, even better. I've never been there, but oh my God, that's scary. I don't even speak the language. But yes, I'm in. I'm totally in. It was a direct flight, which made things a lot easier, less anxiety for me. So I agreed. And then I was able to find, well, no, let me backtrack. I wasn't able to find flights right away. It wasn't up until 4 days before I even left for Madrid that I came across airfare, cheaper airfare from Madrid to Athens, which was my main destination. So talk about in the nick of time. I mean, I literally left this up to fate. I left it up to the universe and said, okay. So I got all my flights booked. I felt 10 pounds lighter, to say the least. And now I just needed to get a hotel room. I had told my cousin all about this trip. So she had happened to just send me this most amazing gift, a link to a travel vlog for Madrid. So I happened to read it, and as I was reading it, this couple had gone, and it sounded magical, had a lot of recommendations, and they recommended an apartment instead of a hotel. And I was like, well, why not? I mean, the way she described it, it sounded amazing. The pictures were amazing. It was cute. It was quaint. I was only going to stay for one night. And if I could go back in time, that would probably be my only change. I would have added a couple days in the front of the trip as well as the back of the trip. But I only spent one entire night, so almost like a whole day in Madrid in the beginning and at the end. So I booked this I booked this apartment, and off I was ready. I was ready to go. I went to the airport and was extremely excited. I don't know, it was the most surrealist feeling I could ever feel. I felt empowered. I was ready for this journey, this solo journey that I've always dreamed of since I was a kid, but always was afraid or overprotected. So I never took on these adventures unless I was, of course, with somebody else. But I was ready to do this, and I was ready to learn and discover new things about myself, as well as see how well I balanced out my anxiety. And I boarded the plane and didn't sleep. So you're supposed to basically book a night flight, but somehow my flight had got bumped up a little bit earlier. So that kind of drastically changed for my sleeping pattern, and I was way too excited. But unfortunately, on this long flight, I did not sleep, and I should have, because now it's very early in the morning in Madrid's airport, which is by far the most intimidating place because it's really large, but also because it's in Spanish. So I did what I could do, and I would ask for help, ask for guidance, especially because I was jumping on planes that weren't my typical, American Airlines, United. So asking for guidance to the baggage. And of course, when I get to baggage, my bag is broken. It's wrapped. And I'm thinking, oh God, this cannot be how this is going to start. And I remember standing there and knowing that the anxiety was about to, seep in, because what do I do and how do I handle this? And now I'm running on fumes. I'm so exhausted. And I'm just standing there, and I remember just telling myself, take that deep breath. And I did. And I took another one. And then I kind of just looked around and said, you're in Madrid. You've got this. There's always a solution to a problem. You'll figure it out. So luckily I did. So as I unwrapped my bag, which I probably shouldn't have, I probably could have just wheeled it on into a taxi. But of course I unwrapped it hastily and I realized that the zipper was broken, but the extended zipper still worked. So I utilized that and my bag was fine. No problems. Got myself a taxi, gave them, before I even get into that, I had realized that it was so early that I originally thought I was going to have enough sleep, so I was going to kind of just walk the city. But since I was running on fumes, so exhausted, and I still had about 6 hours before I could check in, I had looked up hotels by the hour and was lucky enough to find a very cheap hotel, phenomenal. And so I checked in and got myself ready for a nap, which didn't quite happen. And I'll tell you why. Because over there, when they give you the key card, they didn't explain this to me, and had I been more awake, I would have been more aware and alert to understanding what it was I was supposed to do with this key card. But over there, you don't just use the key card to get into your room, but you also place it into a slot, which allows your AC to turn on, your lights to turn on. Well, it was so bright, it was so early that I didn't even think of that, and all I wanted to do was close my eyes. So I thought I was turning up the AC, but I really wasn't doing anything. And it was extremely warm. So I closed my eyes, set my alarm, and I laid there sweating, never really falling asleep, but resting at least. And yeah, I didn't figure that all out until later on when I was in Greece, because they do that there too, and then it all dawned on me like, oh. But I kind of chuckled it off. I wasn't upset. I wasn't mad. I was still a little bit uncomfortable, but I was okay. I figured out I could utilize Uber there, which was great. I got an Uber ride to my apartment, even though that was a little nerve-wracking because they give you a packet of instructions. There's a lot of key codes on walls, inside walls. And once you're in this facility, it's very old. And all these rooms or apartments, all these buildings are basically on top of each other. There's no cut through alleyways or anything. So it's intimidating because it's different. But I finally figured out how to get into my apartment, and it was gorgeous. It was absolutely beautiful. Stepped out in the balcony and, people were just having the time of their lives. So I got settled and I was really hungry. I had not eaten yet. So I took a walk. I utilized my Google Maps, and all I had to do was walk down a block, and there was a beautiful restaurant, a cafe. So I sat outside and ordered and ate. And another thing I learned was if you don't ask for the bill, you could be sitting there for hours. So I finally figured that out as I was Googling and researching. See, that's the good thing about me, is I'll always research. I'll always kind of look up the most random stuff. And although I wasn't going to be there long in the beginning and my anxiety was a little bit higher than normal and I hadn't slept, I didn't really venture off too far away. I just kind of roamed the little area and enjoyed just listening to the people from the balcony and taking in the views. So I got to bed early. I was extremely excited, but yet, oh God, I got to go back to that airport and figure out everything. So went to bed, got up early. Uber picked me up at 4 a.m. for my flight, and off I went. And the airport actually was not bad. I figured it out right away and asked for help and was always approached by the most sweetest people, the most beautifully aligned people. And I felt like that was like a God's blessing. And so once I got on the plane, I was beyond excited. It was a really quick flight. I was like, I can't wait to fly into Greece. And there I was. We were up, we were down, we were landed. My travel agent had this company pick me up. They found me. I was waiting for the ride, and then the guy was telling me all about Greece. Got to my hotel. It was gorgeous. Roamed around a little bit. It was a little tricky to figure out the elevators because they weren't really on levels of 1, 2s, and 3s, but it was still gorgeous. The views. Greece is absolutely stunning. I kind of walked around. I had asked them for a local market, and it was really, really cool to kind of figure out how to get down to these streets because there was like always a little passageway or a tunnelway, very narrow, but everything's brick, and it's just adorable. Got to the market, grabbed some more water, and kind of ventured off, walked around the hotel, went to the rooftop. Their rooftop is one of the top rated in Athens. And from the rooftop, you could see Atropolis. You could see all the beautiful sights, all the hills, all the historical features. The sunset was amazing. I was just in my element, and I just ordered all this food, enjoyed myself, and I don't know, I felt so at peace. And I was just happy to be in one place for a couple days. So went to bed early, got up early because I had an excursion for all day. And that's when I ran into a couple who were a part of the group package I was in. So we kind of became like a throuple, as she said, because we were always together. And later on, I found out that she ended up receiving all of my itinerary. I did not have my itinerary. So she was like, Kathleen. I'm like, how do you know so much about me? She's like, oh, don't you have this? No, I know why I have 2 copies. So we joked around. They were the most amazing couple ever. She's very chill, down to earth, very soulful, my kind of cup of tea. And her husband is just vibrant, such an extrovert, always entertaining, but also my cup of tea because that's also a part of me too. So it was nice to kind of be around them and get to know them after a couple days, you're practically just hanging out all day long anyways. So it was really comforting to be aligned with such a beautiful, soulful couple. So we were on our adventure, and it was a long day. It was a very hot day too, to be in lines and, do the tours and the museums. But I loved it. I loved every part of it. And I was excited that the next day we were to kind of relax and have a day to ourselves. And so we hung out at the pool. I did the restaurant. They went out for a little bit to the nightlife scene. Wasn't really what I was looking for. I got to know other people, and then I got to bed because we were going to be taking a ferry over to Santorini Island for the next 2 days. Of course, we were all together and we were on this ferry, and we thought this ferry was going to be about 2-3 hours. Nope. 8-hour ferry, because Santorini was one of the further islands. But the ferry also stops at every single island to let people on or let people off. We obviously did not read our packets very well. But it didn't matter. I mean, yes, it took away some of the day, but it was still so pretty. And it was very relaxing to be on the ferry. The 3 of us were kind of just laughing or sleeping or eating or kind of walking around, checking out the sights outside. And once we got there, we got to the hotel. And again, gorgeous hotel. How do you can't complain. It's just absolutely stunning. And I'm trying to think of what we did when we got there. I think we all grabbed food, checked places out, and it was just amazing. Very lively, very exciting. So the next day I had an all-day excursion, and my 2 new friends did not. They had their own excursion. So I had to figure that all out. I guess there was a mix-up, and they told me normally what they would do with excursions, they would pick you up from your hotel. But this one did not, and didn't inform me on the WhatsApp until very last second. And when I say last second, I'm just grateful I got up an hour earlier than normal. And I had checked it, and I had to meet them, but this place was 10 minutes away that I had to walk to. Now, walking around is not bad. It's when you're new to it, though, and you're trusting your phone to work and everything, that's when it gets a little bit, skeptical. But it was early. I actually enjoyed the walk. I was a little more afraid of the walk on the way home, but I was like, I'm not going to even think about that yet. So I get there, and I'm like, now, is my excursion like a half day, or did I pick the all day? And she's like, you have the 9-hour day. Well, let me tell you, the 9-hour excursion did not last. It lasted 11 and a half hours. So yes, it was a very, very long day, but a perfect day because I'd met so many new people. We were on a pirate ship. We were going to hike a volcano, which was excruciating, but exhilarating. I loved all of it. Then you swim in kind of like the lava coves, and you could kind of like rub all the lava mud all over you. I did not, because everyone was turning out orange. I was good. And the water was freezing. It's supposed to be a hot spring, but it wasn't. And it was a little bit choppy. So luckily I had a noodle with me, but I was a little bit terrified, let alone that thought of like you're in the ocean and you hear the song from Jaws playing in your head. Yeah, that was going on. But I got back to the boat, got back on, and just enjoyed the warmth of the sunlight as we headed back. And then we were going to Ojai. And there is what they're famous for, their sunset picture. Well, I didn't realize though is people will stand or sit and wait for 2.5 hours. It kind of felt like being at Disneyland. Like I said, the passageways are very narrow. So what you can imagine is people are literally on top of each other. Meanwhile, people are also checking out the markets, and such, or the restaurants, the cafes. Now, I had met this mother and daughter on the pirate ship, and we kind of became a pair, and they were amazing. They're from Boston, and I told them how much I love their city, and I can't wait to go back, which I actually am going back to Boston this fall. And we had a lot to talk about. So it was really, really cool. They were just such beautiful souls. Again, beautifully aligned with amazing people. So they invited me to have lunch with them. They're like, just sit with us. And so that was awesome. And we chatted all day long. And then we met some more people on the ship. And then when we got back to the other part of the island to watch the sunset, luckily her daughter had booked reservations for a restaurant. But since they were there all day, they didn't plan on being there all day. They didn't realize though that the ticket was an all-day excursion. So they were supposed to actually leave halfway through in their mind, but they didn't. They ended up staying. So luckily for me, I got to hang out with them. And luckily in this situation, another abundance came where the manager said that she could cancel her reservation for the next day and utilize it today, which was amazing because then we were able to have dinner on the rooftop, watch the sunset, and not be in that crowd of people. What a blessing. Good food, good people, good conversation, and a gorgeous sunset. And wonderful pictures to go with it. So then, of course, we hike it back to the bus. Now on the bus, it was a little crazy, but this is where I realize it's about 11:30 at night and I am wiped out, but my phone is also running low. And I know that I have to utilize this for Google Maps to walk back to the hotel in the dark. So luckily where I was, it was a 10-minute walk, like I mentioned, but my Google Maps kind of took me a different route, which I couldn't even argue at that time. I was half asleep and all I wanted was a shower and to go to bed. And as I'm walking, it was all lit up because, the nightlife there is amazing and the shops are still open, luckily. So I'm walking and walking and then it has you turn a corner and it's all pitch black. The darkest of darkest alleys, but still quaint because it's all cobblestone, bricks, white walls, everything. And getting a little nervous, but trusting that my phone, even though it said 4%, was going to get me back. Trusting that I could figure out my way through the dark and navigate because I can't see well in the dark. And there was no lights, like absolutely no street lights. As soon as I made that one turn, it was just pitch black. And now it had me walking through what I would imagine is like an old factory parking lot where it's got, company cars or broke down cars. So I'm walking through this gravel parking lot. So it's even a little bit more sketchy in my mind. Now I come from Chicago. You don't often walk in places at night in certain areas. So that's kind of the vibe. It gives you the same vibe, the same feel. However, I kept reminding myself that I was safe, I was protected, that I am in a beautiful, beautiful city and beautiful island, and it's one of the safest. So I kind of just allowed myself to say, stand in your power, stand in your worth, just be alert. And there I was. All of a sudden I'm looking at this building and it looked familiar. And thank God, because in the morning I kind of stared at it for a while. It was the other side of our hotel. And I cut through and I was like, sigh of relief, because my phone literally died as soon as I got to our hotel. And I found my way back to my hotel room, took that shower, and I don't think I could have hit that pillow any faster than I did. So I woke up the next morning, sent a message to my new friends, and met them because we were going to go out to the lower portion of the island, kind of its offbeat path. And her husband had rented a car, So we just drove the 20 minutes down near the ocean. It was recommended because, again, her husband loves to meet people. So he was becoming friends with everyone at the hotel. And they gave him the recommendation for this amazing restaurant. And we had dinner there. And I guess a well-known couple from the island had caught a fish, this ginormous fish. And they were like, we just got the catch of the day. And he brought it out to us, obviously uncooked. And he's like, would you like this? And I looked at Mo. Mo is his name. And I looked at him and he's like, are you going to eat the fish? I'm like, I'll split it with you. But I'm like, the whole thing? Even splitting half of that fish was still too much for both him and I. So poor Cam. Cam's just laughing at both of us because she doesn't touch fish. And I gobbled up a good portion. I actually out-ate Mo anyways. And then we kind of walked around, stopped at some of the markets, checked out the ocean, took some pictures, had a great time. Once again, no complaints. And then we headed back to the hotel and that was it. Went to bed because the next day we were sadly headed back to Athens. And so we had to get on the ferry. By the time we got off the ferry, it was a little bit faster than the first ferry because it said fast ferry, but it only cut it down by 2 hours. So we get back and we get our ride back, but our hotel is even further away from where we were. So that was a longer ride. We get back and we get into the hotel. We had time to grab our stuff and it was about 9 o'clock at night and none of us had eaten dinner, like a real meal. So we grabbed dinner, did some shopping, and by then called it quits. And I had stopped by the room and said goodbye and just told them how amazing they were. And basically thank you. Thank you for kind of taking me under your wing. It was such a joy to be around such amazing souls. Like I said, keep in touch. And they're, from Detroit, which isn't too far from the city where I'm at. And so it was really cool. It was just amazing to get to know two great people. They were headed back to the airport really early. I think they had to leave at like 3 a.m. I looked at my pickup time wrong. And luckily I had woken up, but I wasn't really awake yet. Like I thought I was waking up and had an hour to kind of get my life together. But as soon as I woke up from my alarm, my phone rang and the driver was there to pick me up. I was like, okay, give me a couple of minutes. I never moved so fast in my life. This doesn't really happen to me. I'm pretty prompt and careful with my agenda, my time, my schedules. But no. So I hustled and bustled and luckily had already packed everything the night before and out I went. I don't know how disheveled I looked, but I jumped in the taxi. He dropped me off at the airport. I found my flight and I'm sitting next to this young man. And there was something about this young man that was cool. And he reminded me of my nephew who's going into freshman year of high school. And this young man is a senior and he's on his own. He's, I'd asked him like, oh, are you with your family? He's like, no, my family's in another country, but my brother's here. He's somewhere else. And we're going to go meet them. We were at one country and then we flew to this country separately. I was like, oh, okay. You do you. That's awesome. I was so impressed. But he was such a sweet soul, like a gentle soul. And he kind of helped me out too because they have a different way of lining up. And again, not speaking the language, nor did he, but he had done it so much that he's like, here, just cut in front of me. So I cut in line, got on my flight, got to Madrid. And when I landed in Madrid, I did not have a hotel room because I was so swept up by Greece and the love and just the exposure and the adventures and having the time of my life, I forgot to book a hotel room. So luckily I'm at the airport. It's early. I have time. I simply, before I even ordered a taxi, just kind of sat down outside and went on my booking.com and found an amazing hotel right in the center. But it was a boutique. Let's try it. Why not? So get to the taxi. This cute man did not speak the language. So there was a barrier when he asked for the money afterwards. And I'm trying to text it, text and speak in Spanish. And finally, he was trying to point to how much it was. But the sun was glaring off the meter, so I couldn't see it. So I had all this euro on me that I wanted to hand over, but because of all the miscommunications going on, I finally was like, here's my credit card. This is a lot easier. And so he had told me that because I'm in the city center and it's so populated that you're not allowed to be dropped off at the hotel. So he said, just walk this way, turn right. He uses hand gestures. I'm speaking for him because he obviously was not speaking in English. So again, grab my phone, Google Maps. Now, again, these places, some of them don't really have the proper signage for you to identify everything. They all have numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They're really tiny. You got to pay attention. Some of them are even etched into the stone. And there's so much going on. There's so much hustle and bustle, and there's so many tourists. And I literally was in the heart of the city center. So that was exciting, yet overwhelming because I just wanted to drop off all my stuff. And I walked past it a couple times and I was so confused because I'm looking for a sign. I'm like, I don't see anything. And I saw something that said hostel, but I was like, well, that's not it because it's a boutique. But then I realized, okay, maybe it's just on the 3rd floor. Maybe they only rent out 1 floor of this building. And finally I found it. And I buzzed in, got upstairs, met the beautiful workers there, dropped all my stuff off, and then I asked them, I'm like, hey, do you recommend anywhere I could go to eat, where I should go, what I should see? That's not so tourist specific, but something like hidden gem that you would recommend. Because that was my goal. I had all day to spend, and I was determined to just get out, even though, again, it was in the mid-90s, direct sunlight. I was determined to get out and explore this beautiful city. And so she gave me some recommendations. I went out, I grabbed food. Now, Google Maps there was a little confused, so it was always taking me in circles. Please just let me find my hotel. So I came back because I wanted to change because it was so hot. And they recommended me going into, it was going to be a hike, but it was a beautiful park. So I trucked on and it was really hot. And I ended up walking for at least 5 hours, but I loved it. Once I got there, it was gorgeous. And I walked every inch of it. So yeah, had I had my Fitbit on, it probably would have congratulated me on 1,000 steps. So I did that. I enjoyed myself. I got to see all of its glory of that beautiful city. I got back and I still wanted to try new places that they recommended. And there was a young girl there that I ended up talking to forever. And she was amazing. And she told me I should come back, but go to smaller cities. And she gave me some recommendations. She's like, you would love these. And I was kind of telling her about my spiritual self-healing journey. And she was so enlightened by it. And we ended up becoming friends on WhatsApp. And she ended up sharing later on that she went on a trip because she was kind of enlightened by my journey. And so as soon as I had left Madrid, she, I believe a couple days later, had taken herself on her own trip. And I was like, good for you. You know, that's amazing. But she had told me that I had to try this place that had the greatest churros and hot chocolate. And I did. And I absolutely loved it. And thought I could just sit here and eat this all day long. Now, mind you, I probably would have put on 100 pounds. But I also told her, I'm like, I wish, had I known now what I do know, I would have stayed a lot longer. So I'm just going to have to add that back to my list of places to travel back to and stay longer because it's absolutely stunning in Spain. And I know there's so much more to see. So yeah, I got back on a flight, headed back home. And this time I slept. I slept as much as I could. But I loved every single part of this solo journey. My first ever international solo journey. I loved it so much that when I got home, I had reached out to my travel agent, to my friend, and told her, thank you. Thank you for this magical trip. But I'm going to need another trip now before school starts because now I would like to just treat myself to a very quiet, peaceful, restful, no excursions trip to an island. But an island I'd never been to. But this time, I'm going to let you pick it. And so I did. I just let her pick the trip. And she created it for me. It was an all-inclusive to Saint Martin. Which, when I got there, I learned that there's a Saint Martin and a Saint Martin. British side and a French side. And I was there for 5 days and loved it. And I just got back last week. And what a dream. What an amazing summer. And what a way to treat myself. Things I've never done before. But the fact that after coming off of a very rough school year and the hardships and the chaos and the battles that we had to go through as a team, to then give myself this amazing summer because I'm worthy of it. I was beyond grateful. I'm still grateful. And now I told my friend, I'm like, get ready. Next summer is even better because I got plans. I got plans that include me being gone for several weeks and not just 5 days. So that's my desire for the year, is to build this dream vacation for next summer, solo again. And this time it's going to be a little bit more expansive, meaning several countries is in the hopes. So I'll make sure to keep you guys updated on that. But here's what I learned. I learned that fear used to run my life, and I simply don't let it anymore. And the minute fear creeps in, I'm able to just stop, allow myself to feel it, ask myself where it's coming from, and then I simply just let it go. And it's so different now than it was before, because I would cling on to that and I would let it creep back in, and I would hold on to those negative, toxic ways of thinking, and I don't. And I also realize I have a lot more strength and warrior within me to take on anything. And there's so much more out there in the world, adventures, people, conversations, food, that I just want to explore. My soul just desires this, and I can't wait.